to Utes, right? You actually
Yeah.
didn't you reserve drive essentially for Pither, or how did that work?
Yeah. So I was lucky. So Brad picked me up and Brad funded it.
Yeah.
So, like we're family. The way we are is that's the way we are. Macca, Brad, Melly, Monty, Matty. That's the Jones family, and I'm part of it. I'm very grateful, and will be forever in Brad's debt because he made me a better person in a lot of ways and taught me a lot of things. And I probably wouldn't be doing what I'm doing now in a sense without his input. He really helped with that. So I was very lucky in the fact that they funded it. And I coached Macca, lived with Macca. Like I lived with the family for, like I said, 4 years. So we did Formula Ford.
But did you come in with like a budget originally, like 70K, and that we'll spend that year?
No.
Okay.
I was so lucky.
Yeah, right. So Brad, because you were helping Macca.
I was helping Macca. So it was a pro, it was pro rata, it's worth this much or whatever. But Brad was great. He taught me how to get sponsors. He brought me in the workings of the team. So I worked at the team. I worked on my own car. I went to all the supercar races. I looked after Macca. So
did you test the supercar in the end or not?
Yeah, I tested the supercar a few times.
Okay.
The idea was always I was going to go supercars. So we did the Formula Ford, and then we were trying to go to Super 2, and it just didn't line up, like the funding was falling out like that. There was no funding. We said I think the wording was we could do 3 rounds or something, and it was just like, and then I'd sort of given up on it, to be perfectly honest. Yeah. And I remember sitting down with Brad and I said, okay, so when am I going to be a supercar driver? Like I had a contract, everything that I was their driver. I said, so when am I going to actually make money? Yeah. Like I have all my living expenses, but I'm 21 or something. When am I actually going to be able to race supercars for sure and make money? Yeah. That's like how long's a piece of string. So I got to the point where I was frustrated with the world. Yeah. I was frustrated with not being able to progress. I felt like I was fast enough in a Formula Ford. Like we won races, we podiumed a lot. I crashed into a lot of people. I didn't have great anger management. Yeah. And that was a weakness of mine. But I felt we were good enough to go. Now in retrospect, I wasn't. But in the time I felt I was. So then essentially we I said, Mac was going to Formula Ford. I said, okay, I'm going to start, doing some coaching. I moved back home, and then all of a sudden the Pither thing come up, and they said, be at Eastern Creek on the 23rd of December for a ride day. Did a ride day, and then, so Pither won the championship, and then he was only doing 1 round, I think. And Brad organised it but didn't really tell me, I'm pretty sure. And then I did 2 rounds in that. Great experience. Chris is just a legend, really good guy. Darren Park ran it and it was a professionally run.
Darren Park, the ex-GT driver.
No, he was involved. He's got a business. I forget. Anyway, he's just a good dude. Yeah. Loves motorsport. Has always backed Pither. Yeah. They had the ice brake car. So I did that. It was a really good car. It was a good team. Crashed at Bathurst in qualifying. That wasn't so
What do you think of the current Utes these days? Because everyone's against them because they're not like the old ones. What's your take on that?
I don't like watching them.
You don't You're just not interested in them?
They sound like crap, so.
Do you think that's the other question? Like some people believe it's a path to supercars. Do you believe Super Utes is a path to supercars?
No.
Yep.
Here we go. That answers that question.
Yep. But why do you think that then? Just to get your opinion on it.
They're not fast enough.
Yeah.
They move around too much. They're a fair way from the platform of a supercar. I'm not to say that they're that's just my opinion. They're very different to a supercar. Your CFG is very high. I don't know enough about them, to be perfectly honest, but I don't think their braking package is that great. Yeah. It's not a slick tire.
Yeah.
The list sort of goes on. It's under the right card. It's on supercar, on the supercar support category, but that also entails that
In your opinion, though,
friggin' expensive.
do you think because you're doing the Trans Am thing, should they flip the Utes out for the Trans Am and have that Super 3, Super 2
No, it'd be
Supercar?
too expensive for Trans Am then.
Yeah.
As soon as you're a support package, your entry fees go through the roof.
Yeah.
You know, the reason Trans Am's so good is bang for buck.
Yeah.
You know, the cars are relatively cheap. They're not cheap, but they're relatively cheap. Hey, they can get better. Like the brake package on it's rubbish. But everybody's got the same. You know, there's a lot of good things about that. You know, you go and stuff an engine. It's a handback program. Now it's got a controlled shock. You can have a car that's from 2018, a car that's from 2021, or I think we've got a 16 to 21.
Yeah.
The 16 right now is faster. I'm not saying the 21's no worse. They've got different setups, but they're the same.
Yeah.
Engines are all the same. You know, like there's a really good and bang for buck.
It kind of reminds me of the early 90s supercars, though, the way that they, you know what I mean? Like
they move around.
Yeah.
They're good things. You know, I feel like
I want to race one. That's why I love it. That's why I like
I'll
talking
give you a
about it.
test.
Awesome.
Hey,
100%.
Dan is like,
No, you're coming
he
to the
will
next
give
test.
a lung or something to drive one of these.
No, when we got a test in Winton, you're coming.
Oh, sweet.
There you go. There's Dan.
They're cool things. Like
Yeah.
we got to fix a few things. They look gnarly under brakes. They move around like nothing else. So there was something going on, but that would be bump steer or something. But they're good cars. They're good, solid cars, and I just feel they're an even platform. And so many one make series are riddled with
Red tape?
red tape,
Yeah. Okay.
a lot of grey areas,
Yeah.
and a lot of grey areas people go into.
Yeah. Okay.
So, you know, like it's
Is this like 86s and stuff like that in Aussie race cars? or
Yeah,
is
the
it
whole
more-
lot.
Yeah.
Like if you're controlled that way, and it's very controlled, but
Because you would have, back then, you would have gone, when you were racing yourself through those ranks, you would have seen all that stuff. Do you know what I mean? And then obviously applied it to your drivers now, where you're putting them into.
100%. And that's why we avoid a few of them, because, you know, I look at bang for buck. How many laps you got $3. How far can you go? How much experience? You look at the gears, you look at Waters, you look at all those guys, they're in something all the time. You've got to be in something. You've got to have experience. The gears car control is just unbelievable. Waters, you know, Chaz, car control, experience is everything. No one has, other than Feeney or Lowndes, I think back probably to Lowndes, has won in their first year.
Yeah.
You know, probably not many people had Brock's opportunity jumping in a car that won championships, you know, but hats off to him. He still won.
Yeah.
He did it and he had that. But Brock does a lot of days at Norwell, does a lot of driving, and it's essential. So I look at where I'm going to place somebody. How many laps can I do? You know, is it an even playing field? Am I going to get bang for my buck? Am I going to be able to, you know, put tyres on the car? There's no use being able to race a series and not do it properly. If you're going to do it, you need to be able to do it properly, because otherwise, you know, John's a perfect example. McCorkindale, the poor bastard, he races series, but he doesn't have the luxury of being able to go, okay, you're allowed 4 sets of tyres this weekend. Can't afford that. I'm going to go 2.
Yeah.
You're always playing catch up.
Yeah.
The guy's good enough, but you're playing catch up. You know, and if you can't afford to do it, and this sounds crazy and probably horrible, but if you can't afford to do it at that top level, well, and being able to be competitive, you're selling yourself short. So I find that so hard. So I feel that the budgets that my guys have got, they're the right budget for this class.
Yeah.
And for their first introductory, like I now make them do Formula Ford. So they do a year of Formula Ford, state Formula Ford in WA.
Yeah.
Really cost effective.
Brooke was actually asking about that. She was like, all Tommy's guys go to supercars, but they seem to do Formula Ford as well. And what were you saying?
Yeah, because what is, you know, like Dan and I were talking about the path used to be karts, Formula Ford, because Formula Ford was on the Supercars bill, so you always saw them there. And that's where a lot of the even the current V8 supercar drivers have come through. What sort of categories do you look at with your drivers as you're explaining? And the other question I had was, you said there's ones you miss, obviously one of them being Super Utes. Is there any other categories that you miss between all of these?
So I stuffed up in the early days with the first sort of guys with Fife. and Morse.
Yeah.
And I sort of went, Morsey went the 86 route.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
He spent a lot of money over 2 years, in my opinion. And that's just because he didn't get the right car. So there's still that element.
Yeah.
You got to have the right car.
Is this Formula Ford or 286?
86.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't know if that's changed, but that's the way it was. And with Fifey, I sent him straight to Super 3. And he did well straight away. But when the going got tough and there were things that were hard, we missed those essential steps, you know. And I feel like that's on me. That was my mistake in saying, hey, let's do this. And we probably weren't quite ready. So now I get him to do a year of KZ, top line karting.
Yep.
There's no harder thing. Like, you will not drive anything harder after you drive KZ.
Yeah.
Like, even Fernando, like when I speak to Alonso, he says the hardest thing is a KZ, harder than an F1.
Which is a gearbox cut.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I make him do that. Make him do a year of senior competition.
Yeah.
Because in juniors, I feel like they're good drivers, yeah. They're probably some of the fastest, but you get away with a lot. You get to seniors and you get some of the old heads and they teach you a few lessons. So they make you combat hardened. So this is the way I do it. And then I put you in a Formula Ford. We don't really have anything else. There's no F4. The F4 we do have is in my opinion, overgripped and underpowered.
Yep.
Where with a Formula Ford, you know, I know everything's going paddle shift and et cetera, you know, auto blip, this, that. You get into a Formula Ford, you got none of that crap.
Yeah.
You have to learn to go across a gate. You have to force speed, you know. You have to learn to blip the throttle, you know, heel and toe. You right foot brake most people, you know, those sorts of things are so important and you may never, ever use it. Yeah. But what happens when your auto blip doesn't work?
Yeah.
What happens when you're in the middle of Le Mans and all of a sudden you've got this problem and you've got to blip the throttle, you've got to heel and toe. It's still there. If you've done that, nothing's going to be harder. You know, you need to have car control. I'm sorry, to drive Formula Ford, that's the easiest way to learn car control. You've got to float the thing. You've won.
Yeah.
You got to get in. You got to be aggressive but smooth. You got to be able to carry speed. Your braking techniques needs to be spot on. If it's not spot on, you waste time. That's why we go to over to Barbagallo. Brett. Mate, it's the biggest stop in the country in a Formula Ford. You go down that hill, you're doing 200 clicks and you're stopping the thing. You learn brake technique, and that's all I bang on about.